Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very good evening to all of you. We will start our program with the recitation from Holy Quran, and I would like to invite Mr. Kashif to recite a few verses from Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد صدق الله العظيم.
Jazakallah, Mr. Kashif. Ladies and gentlemen, let me briefly introduce myself. As most of you know, I am Khalilullah Sheikh. I am member of the Southern Region Committee of the Institute and the CPD convener of this Southern Region for the year 2010 and 11. I am currently associated with Karachi Electric Supply Company as its Director Finance and Business Administration. So on behalf of SRC, I welcome you all here and thank you for being here. Today we have with us our speaker, a learned speaker, Mr. Zulfikar Ahmed Patel, who is a Senior Manager in Ernst & Young, and we have Mr. Ayaz Ahmed, who is a CFO in Habib Bank Limited. So ladies and gentlemen, this topic today, the term Basel Accord, I think it's not something which is unfamiliar to us. We all know what Basel Accord is. But post this financial sector crisis, the risk management and the capital adequacy requirements and all this have attained huge significance for the banking sector and banking industry. The Basel Accord 3, it primarily proposes or it seeks to promote a more resilient banking sector. In one of its documents, the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision says that this reform agenda, the objective of this reform agenda is to improve the banking sector's capability to absorb the shocks that arise from different financial and economic crises and to ensure that there is no significant spillover from the banking sector to the real economy. Now, what is there in this Basel Accord 3? What are the new capital requirements? What are the liquidity requirements? What are the better things? What are the bitter pills for the banking sector? And what are the timelines? All this will be covered in detail by our learned speaker today. The program sequence will be that we'll have a presentation here today in a few minutes, and then that presentation will be followed by a question answer session, and finally we'll request our session chairman to conclude the session with his remarks. I would like to briefly introduce our speaker. Mr. Zulfikar Ahmed Patel is a very qualified and experienced seasoned professional. He has mashallah a lot of qualifications. He is an associate member of ICAP and ICAW. He is a CFA charter holder, and he also holds the designations of Financial Risk Manager and Professional Risk Manager. Cumulatively, he has an experience of over 14 years of experience in audit, consultancy, and risk advisory services. He has also conducted a lot of seminars and workshops, not only in-house for his own firm and its clients, but also for ICAP as well. So I would now, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Zulfikar. I would like to hand over the podium to him now. Just one last thing, in 10 minutes, we'll have a Maghrib prayer for 15 minutes and then we'll reconvene. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening to all of you. As such, I've already been introduced. My name is Zulfikar. So firstly, starting with this seminar session, I'm going to be providing you ladies and gentlemen with a brief overview of what are the key salient features of the Basel III Accord. So the Basel regulatory changes have been approved by the Basel Committee recently, and these guidelines were issued on September the 12th. Now, these primarily involve increasing the quantity and quality of the bank capital. Previously, under the Pillar 2 Accord, under Basel II rather, the common equity was supposed to be around 2% in effect. Now, in the long term, it will be increased to 6%. So there is emphasis on not only quantity, but also the quality of the capital. In terms of quality, capital will largely comprise of common equity, because at least 75% of all Tier 1 capital will be common equity, which is the best form of capital as such in terms of its loss absorption, because one, it is subordinated to all interests in the balance sheet, including the subordinated loan. The bank does not have to pay out dividend on it. It can't be compelled to pay out dividend on it or redeem it for that matter, right? Then obviously there is another aspect of as regards the quantity of capital. Now certain questions have been raised that the banking industry as such within Pakistan is already at 10%, right? But then there is an aspect as to the quality of the capital, because under Basel III, deferred tax assets on account of carry forward losses will no longer be eligible. I.e. they will be deducted directly from capital, right? So it's about quality and it's about quantity, right? So the capital conservation buffer is expected to be 2.5%, constituting primarily of common equity, right? And then there would be counter-cyclical capital buffer, which is at the discretion of the national advisor. They may and may not adopt it. So if the regulator, which is our central bank, they feel that the economy is overheated, there is simply too much supply of money in the economy, right? Then they may opt to impose a counter-cyclical buffer, which can vary from 0 to 2.5%, right? Alternately, they will not require banks to basically adopt that counter-cyclical buffer, but may require them to basically amend their policies, right? Because in certain instances what happens is that, let's take an example of the housing market, right? If say the prices are booming, then the loan to value ratio, right? The loan to mortgage value ratio would appear to be very healthy for banks, right? So they can on basis of the asset itself, they at times, especially in the Western market, they have at times continually gone on to basically finance the housing market. Then as prices crash, then one realizes that perhaps the policy has been pro-cyclical, right? So obviously the counter-cyclical buffer aspect is, I will repeat once again, that it is a discretionary item that the regulator may impose. Forward-looking provisions. Now one key aspect that us accountants find interesting is that previously under IAS 39 we needed an objective evidence of impairment when booking provisions. The Bank of International Settlements has actively taken it up with the IASB that they need to incorporate a forward-looking provisioning requirement based on expected losses, because what they feel is that IAS 39 is quite pro-cyclical at times. You see, the thing is that in good times there's bound to be lower provisioning, right? So there are healthy net profits which banks pay out to their dividend shareholders, right? And the Bank of International Settlements, which basically has a great degree of influence over local regulators all over the world, it has taken it up with the IASB that look, going forward you need to have forward-looking provisions. If you feel that there is going to be perhaps a recession going forward, then you need to build that in. And this is in line with the Basel II's advanced approach, expected losses, yeah? For those of you who come from the risk management department, they will be familiar that PD multiplied by LGD and EAD would give you an expected loss parameter, right? Okay. Then we have capital requirements which would be increasing for trading book and securitization. Under the advanced approach, banks would now be expected